chill into it as usual. Oh, and welcome to another of the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who special fan feedback surveys. Today's one, we looked at who the fans thought were the best Doctor Who writers. And as usual, I've got my colleague, Mr. Arnold.
Hello.
We will look over your results. And in advance, can I just say for all of you, and there were quite a few people who voted, number 10, very funny.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'll keeping you in suspense. I'll let you know some of the people who don't make the list, John. So you don't get to talk to them about them. Unfortunately, Bob and Dave, not there.
Oh, I love it. Big ideas, often too big for the BBC's budget,
Yes.
but it's always so watchable. Right from the claws of actors. Not maybe not Underworld, but we'll forgive them that one.
No Ian Stewart Black, alas. I quite like. Well, I specifically like the Macra and the War Machines, but he got into the swing of the show, but he's not there.
Yeah, they're quite. It's quite almost psychedelic. The Macaron tearing away because it's just the holiday camps repurposed as a place of evil in the far future. It's so well done. I really want that back. I just want, but obviously, sadly, there's no such thing as Macra.
It's basically the prisoner with bank trapped. We've also got no room for Ian Briggs or Johnny Byrne from the 80s. I guess Fenric wasn't enough to get him on the list.
No, people are thinking of Dragonfire, and maybe that's not quite as good as Fenric, but
from much earlier on, regulars to the series, Louis Marks and Brian Haley's not nominated whatsoever.
see, I wouldn't have Brian Hales on mine because I don't think he's that great a writer. He has some lovely ideas, but they just tend to be quite dull in their execution. Unless, I mean, even Uncle Terry on board for the Monster of Peladon, and Bob Holmes for a bit of that, I think it's not very good. Maybe the Curse of Peladon we can get away with.
His biggest issue is his two best stories weren't written by him.
Certainly the second half wasn't one of them.
And from Yoo-Hoo, no Paul Cornell, no Mark Gatiss, which I was a bit sad about because I
was going to say, as a child of the, well, I wouldn't say child of the wilderness years, but as someone who was there right through that time, it's a travesty. And Father's Day is great. One of the shows that in the first series that tells you it's not quite the Doctor Who that you were used to. And Human Nature, Family of Blood is one of the all-time greats. But Mark Gatiss, one of the solid, reliable guys. And yeah, I mean, he wouldn't personally be on mine, but he has some really nice comedy moments in there. So yeah, and I think comedy writers always tend to get undervalued.
He was pretty much Mr. Solid for Yoo-Hoo. He's dirt coy. You'd always get a 6 or 7 out of 10 out of him.
Yeah, it's just for when Russell and Stephen were going, oh good God, we've got to put another 13 episodes together. You go to Mark Gatiss, there you go, 7 out of 10. You don't have to worry about that one.
And prepare your shocked face now. Someone else not appearing on the list is Mr. Chris Chibnall.
I cannot believe it's perhaps a little harsh given he is one of the most significant writers, but he's very, very Marmite. If the people who love the era really, really love it, and I'm absolutely glad that there are people for whom that era absolutely works, and it's as much time as say the McCoy or Eccleston eras do to me, or even Capaldi. But yeah, I can see why he's not going to make it. I think technically, as a showrunner, he's following two of the best writers in the British TV industry, not just in Doctor Who. So it's a thankless task.
I think it's quite telling that folk we know who liked Chibnall era were voting for RTD instead of Chibnall.
Yeah, I can understand that and sympathise with it a lot.
So, just bubbling under the top 20. They didn't quite make it, but they could have if other people had voted. So it goes. Stephen Wyatt, so alas, there will no be the greatest show in the galaxy for John tonight.
It's an outrage. Those two scripts are beautiful. They're works of art, frankly. The ideas in them, the way they're almost a template for what Andrew Cartmell's doing with the Seventh Doctor. So yeah, I shall be mildly grumpy about that.
Joy Wilkinson, she nearly made it, but didn't quite. And given she only wrote one story, that's quite impressive, I thought.
It's only the Witchfinder, but the Witchfinders is one of those really good ones in that first Jodie season. It shows that that version of the show can really work. It's and what I love particularly about it plays with that kind of thing about there being the female doctor without leaning into all the cliches of this is what you should do with a female doctor. It's really nice done, and obviously writing that kind of big role for Alan Cumming as well. That's a big thumbs up from me.
Also, two names just missing, the latter one of which will really sadden you, like it saddens me, because we're big fans. But those two that just didn't make it were Stephen Gallagher and Donald Cotton.
Again, travesty. both of them. I think Stephen Gallagher's reputation kind of gets affected by Terminus's reputation, perhaps. I think, because Terminus isn't maybe the best made series, but it's got all the ideas. But Warriors Gate, oh, what a beautiful, beautiful script that is. Donald Cotton, I think, possibly, stiff competition, probably my favourite writer of that Hartnell era. The guy that, and I love the way he essentially gets away with the same template of story twice. It's beautiful. Examine the reputation of the era. Oh, look, it's all great comedy, and it all goes to hell in the end.
Very Blackadder, but they were still at uni at the time.
Yeah, Blackadder going to Quentin Tarantino.
Yes.
Hello, future Michael here with an apology. You're about to hear a discussion of a writer who you, the fans, actually ranked in the top 10. This is because I screwed up counting the votes, and despite best efforts to re-edit the video to cover my tracks, it was unfixable. So please enjoy discussion of Malcolm Hulke imminently, instead of in the top 10 where he ought to be. This mistake was entirely mine, and nothing to do with John. Once again, apologies, and back to the writer's talk.
Oh, although it's a shame that the Mythmakers is lost, because even in the recons, you can still see the long years where there's clearly non-audio comedy happening, and you can't see it.
Yes, that's part of the issue with the recons is we can't know how the actors were doing, how they were performing. We can see, a lot of them. We can see the images, the still images, but you don't see the movement, the energy, what they were doing, the little reactions. Because so much when Troughton episodes came back was you saw what Troughton was bringing to the series, and it was beautiful.
Right. But then our 20th place. So they are actually on the list in joint 20th place. So in 20th place, there are fan feedback lists on best Doctor Who writers of all time, is three names who are among the most important in what they produced for the show. And that is Jerry Davis, Kit Pedler, and Malcolm Hulke.
Oh, a three-way tie on that.
Yes.
Oh, well, it's appropriate you've got Jerry and Kit together there, isn't
Yes.
it? Yeah. They are almost inextricably linked, I think, with their early work. And really, Jerry Davis should make it because, along with Innes Lloyd, they reshaped the show. Because if you watch the Verity Lambert era, it's a wonderful era. It's the strangest thing you'll ever see put out as Sunday evening television. The Web Planet, my God, why are they even attempting that? But Jerry Davison is like they reshaped Doctor Who into the adventure series template that it kind of needs to keep going for, with 60 years now.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Jerry Davison is really kind of undersold as to his importance. And Kit Pedler, again, I know Michael's just bought the biography that's come out. I never thought he was that great a writer, but the ideas he had, and as a character, I would thoroughly recommend the biography by Michael Seeley. It's an absolutely fascinating tour. And funnily enough, Malcolm Hulke, I am I'm bowing no one to my admiration for him. As I say, Doctor Who's communist, I think, as he gets called. And he writes the show as an adult one. He writes the contemporary concerns. Invasion of Dinosaurs. When I was writing about that, you're just impressed with the way he brings to life even the most minor characters. He gives them all internal life. He gives them little role. There's no minor role in a Malcolm Hulke story. It's character work is fantastic. And you give 10 sticks to edit it in maybe into where plotting was perhaps sometimes not a strong point, and it's absolute gold. And I forgive him Colony in Space, obviously.
The reason Davis is there is because he was voted for, as in Jerry Davis and Kit Pedler, because of the moon base, and that reveals that the votes are there.
Quite right too. If you're running the poll, power corrupts, but rank has its privileges, as Mike Gates once put it.
I mean, Jerry Davis has one of the most fascinating backstories of any writer for the show. By the time he was 30, he'd been in the army, he'd worked in Canada and Britain, he'd worked in the North Pole, he'd been in the Navy, and found himself back in England supporting his wife, who was sadly dying of cancer at the time. By the time he got to Doctor Who, he'd worked on 3 or 4 continents in about 10 different jobs and been widowed. It's he had no end of things to write what you know about.
No, I was going to say, most of us don't go that far in a lifetime.
Yes. Obviously, Kit Pedler, more of an ideas man than a nuts and bolts scriptwriter, until we find out who actually did the nuts and bolts of the moon base. But as an
Michael
idea,
has a theory on this.
Well, technically, it was Andrew Pixley had a theory on it, but I want to double check it before I do the marathon thing. Always check your facts if they're 20 years old, as Pixley said, because they may have been proven wrong in Doctor Who.
You don't know what's coming out in the meantime.
But when he came to ideas in Doctor Who, his first idea was the basis of the internet back when nobody was really. You had to have read the articles in the science magazines and in your mind work out how it would work in real life at the point of the war machines coming out.
I believe Davis got a lot of scientists in, and they weren't willing to kind of go and speculate beyond what they knew. But Pedler was very, very happy to.
Yes, Patrick Moore got asked about the concept of a 10th planet and said it'd be physically impossible.
Well, it's not wrong.
True. Moore was a big Doctor Who fan, so he thought they could work together, but no. Ein's mind v sci-fi didn't work. And of course, the Cybermen. I mean, genius idea.
It's, techno zombies almost.
Yes.
And just the imagery of it and that simple idea. And I think the prologue they had in the Target books describing them, just boiling that concept down to to one page, is still one of my favourite passages of Doctor Who prose that there is.
Oh, it's just such a great concept, and it's the thing about Pedler's sci-fi influences in the show is for a show which can be quite fast or quite timely. Like the moon base gets more realistic with each passing decade, with the whole concept of the global warming and climate change in it within it.
Yeah, and that you can plug holes in bases with a tea tray.
Oh, good old T-Trace.
You knew I was going to come up with that, didn't you? Come on.
Oh,
Puts you off
you know,
sugar in your tea for life, though. Or
when I
coffee.
was a teenager, I explained that the tea tray was because the gravitron was on it, and therefore it was keeping it in place. As an adult, I realised that the gravitron is not on in that scene, and it's just daft, and who cares?
Exactly. It's Doctor Who. Just go with it.
Oh, and Mac Hulk, obviously, Mr. Shades of Grey himself. I mean, you saw his influence even before Uncle Teddy was involved in the show when he did the Faceless Ones, and it ends with the Doctor forgiving the villain of the piece and giving them a second
Yeah.
chance. Um,
And he's always got the villain. And I said there's no minor characters. The villains are always really well motivated.
mhm.
Or when I say villains, that should always be in inverted commas. Antagonists would probably be
Yes.
a better word.
I mean, he got brought in twice by Term 6 to save disaster zones, i.e., the War Games and Ambassadors of Death, and they produced gold out of both. And so, Ambassadors of Death is the keystone for there are no villains, just lots of misguided people.
Yes.
Reagan's not the nicest person, but he is taking advantage rather than being in charge, we say.
Yes. Whereas Canton, your main villain is, again, you can see what's led him to that point, what the backstory is. Again, you see that with Grover invasion of dinosaurs. You can see it even with perhaps the capitalism of the war games, the wars and the war chiefs. You see why the warlords and the war chiefs have got where they are. The face of the chameleons. It's one of the very few of those early Trek stories where the monsters are not irredeemably evil, where they have a really good, solid reason to be doing what they're doing.
Yes. I mean, the thing that I get from Mac Hulk's stuff is that he's always quite kind to his characters. He'll always give them reasons for motivation and be sort of charitable to them.
Even when he doesn't
Yes,
agree with
even when he's against them, like the big example is Trenchard in Sea Devils, which a great character, so blinkered and precious, but so great. And of course you got the
But
bit when he's dead and his pal's like, how could he have done such a thing? And the doctor, he's got to save the whole world, but he stops to reassure this guy that his friend didn't turn out. He wasn't a trench coat. He thought he was trying to do the right thing, and it's just such a
and if we go into the novelization where he, Trenchard doesn't take the safety catch off, and the doctor quietly slips the safety catch on just to save the reputation, and that's an absolutely beautiful moment. I think it does sum Malcolm Hulker.
Although the whole Hulk's Target novels did lead had the rare disappointment in dinosaurs. Each time I watch it, I'm waiting for that moment where is it Baker reveals that he's got the scar. So he was a fireman and he fell saving a child's life, and it's only in the book, not in the actual TV episode.
Yes, it's I think it's exclusive because he had to make Butler identifiable in a scene from Sarah's point of view.
Yes.
So he can't say she saw Butler. She doesn't know who Butler is. It would just be a guy. So he gives it a scar to make it, sure she can identify him later on as well.
Yeah.
So he really does put a lot of thought into the craft and that writing.
I shall move on because we could probably spend hours talking about Mac Hulk alone. Number 19, another favourite of John's I'm aware of. It's Christopher Bailey, who wrote Kinda and Snake Dance.
Again, two of the finest scripts of that decade. I would actually go so I say the two best scripts of the Eric Sayward era. Snake Dance is, in a year of the anniversary where Doctor Who's supposed to be celebrating. That one is really slightly questioning the very notion of anniversaries, of how we, you can even see it of Doctor Who itself, of how we kind of domesticate the unfamiliar. Like, so like the Daleks become these familiar monsters almost. They lose that kind of terrifying notion. But underneath it, as he's trying to remind it, they really are terrifying. And it's good when Rob Shearman goes, I'll do that for 2 with the Daleks in Jubilee. And and Kinder, it's a wonderful, it's so unlike anything else in Doctor Who. It's trying to be philosophical, it's trying to play again with the notion of Doctor Who, as we said in the cliffhangers. On that episode 2 cliffhanger for me is one of the greatest of all time. I will almost put it up there above the Androzani 3, for the Davison era. It's gorgeous. So yeah, and I mean the only fault in the story to me is the fact where Sayward puts in the bickering scenes with Adric and Nissa. That's Adric and Tegan. But I would have him higher personally, but I can't fault the taste of people putting him on the list.
I think the best bit in the Snake Dance is the bit where you've got the kids playing with the little Mario toys.
Oh
Like,
gosh,
the greatest evils become a kid's toy.
God, yes, exactly. And where they're going down the street with the Mara puppet on the costume. Again, domesticated.
Obviously, I share your views on Kinder being excellent. I love the whole inner philosophy of it, which is that the man who has wisdom knows how little he knows.
Yes, the fool.
So many wonderful lines. Sorry.
Gives Mary Morris such a good role as well.
Yes. And I'll stuff like it's got its philosophy, but it's also got its funny moments, like an apple a day keeps it. Never mind.
Paradise a little too green even for me.
And you've got a display of mental illness, which is not half bad by the standards of TV. That you can't mend people is such a great line.
That is a tough one to act.
Yes.
But what a performance! Yeah, so you can't mend people. It's just all jaw dropping. It's still, when I'm watching it today, it still stops me.
It's just, I mean, he's right on the line where if you go either way, it becomes mannered or OTT, and he's exactly on the line for each line. It's in his cat role, and it's very spot on. Anyhow, and also to love a story which gives Janet Fielding something to do other than look grumpy at everyone for.
Yeah, I mean, her getting to play sultry is absolutely perfect, and both stories are really strong for Tegan. And a lot of the time, the female companions, as if you've ever heard a Janet Fielding commentary, you'll know they can be really underwritten. They're there to feed the lines to the Doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And no, this. I know. Ironically, he does write Nissa out completely almost after the story. That's contractual reasons. But no, they're both really, really strong stories for Tegan and for other female roles in there as well.
Mm-hmm. Moving on, number 18. It's a New Who regular. Well, they've not been around for a few years now, but they may come back under the new ownership. It's Mr. Toby Whitehouse.
I think he's worth being in there just for the God complex. Let's be fair.
Yeah, I love the God complex.
What a story that is.
I genuinely think that's my favourite Matt Smith Doctor Who story. It's just
I, yeah, it's definitely up there. It's one of my top five. I can't say certainly if you discount say the Day of the Doctor, which is a special case. I adore it. As one of those straightforward episodes. It's not a special episode. It's not a season start or a season ender. Just in the middle of the season, you just watch it, and it just blows you away with how clever it is. Just that I know it's riffing off The Shining,
yes.
but that's what sort of thing Doctor Who should be riffing off.
The Shining meets the Horns of Nimon only in Doctor Who.
What more do you want?
Oh,
The Minotaur is lost in his own maze. It's glorious, and then school reunion as well.
yes. Although School Reunion always struck me as the one that seems most hurt by no longer being four-parters, because there's a lot of characters in it I feel would have flourished under the old system, which gets squished through the need to tell the story in 42 minutes.
You could have done two parts of that. I think it does get to that heart of what people want from the episode, which is that Doctor, Sarah Jane, and the emotional power of it, which RTD's version of Doctor is always going to go for strongly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm delighted he's made this. Because I'd love to see Doctor Who.
Yes. I mean, if he's going to do another one with Under the Lake, I'd be quite happy to see him return. I loved Under the Lake. Ghost story, Ghosts in Scotland.
Those first episode was brilliant. The second episode, I think, maybe falls apart a little, but I adore that the bootstrap paradox at the start. The way he's got Capaldi talking to the camera, brilliantly conceived.
Even if the second episode isn't as good as the first one, because the first one is excellent, the second one still has the bit where the ghosts are creeping up on the deaf woman.
Yes,
that's wonderfully creepily done.
Yeah, it's. I think he almost gets that kind of balance with Doctor Who horror and humor better than almost any other writer that's there.
Yeah,
even going back to Bob Holmes et al. I think he just nails it for a Saturday evening audience.
Number 17, Dennis Spooner.
Oh, that's quite nice.
The Romans, the Meddler, Reign of Terror, and of course he script edited quite a lot of the second series, and edited quite a chunk of Power of the Daleks.
And you can see he's the guy who first brings outright comedy to Doctor Who, because the Reign of Terror, for all it's about, one of the most bloody periods in history, in large part, it's all about the comedy. It's the Doctor and the guy at the roadside.
The Reign of Terror is really weird because at one point it's a season 1 historical, complete with ethos and ethics of time traveling.
Yes,
but it's also got Dennis Spooner scenes in it, and they don't mesh very well.
No, I think that's partly it. I don't think he quite fits into David Whittaker's version of Doctor Who, because you can see almost when the Crusade comes up again, it's kind of like how do I put it? It's the sore thumb thing that kind of sticks out as this really big serious drama where everything else is getting a few funny lines added here and there.
I always find that Dennis Spooner is good at jokes, like witty lines. The Doctor revealing to Nero that he knows Nero's plans with the roaring success.
Glorious.
Or the Doctor getting increasingly pissed off at Stephen refusing to believe he's gone in time. He's travelled in time.
Dear boy, what a scene that! Worth ending for that scene alone. Playing the silent liar in the Romans as well.
And then one of my he's also two of my favourites in the the Romans. The cliffhanger. How did they get out of it in part two? End of episode, an assassin is creeping up on the Doctor. Episode 2 reveals that the Doctor just fucks the guy.
Yes.
Oh, and
The show already. It's
the
brilliant.
bit where the Doctor sets fire to the plans, and Nero goes off into this rant about how he's going to put in an island and the water will raise and alligators will get you. And then he comes up with the idea to set Rome on fire, and he goes, "You're a genius," and walks off. And the Doctor turns to the guards and said, "There you go. We're all good now. Go away. You'll get some of that alligator business."
Love it. And just the whole idea of the time meddler. You know, what if the Doctor was chaotic? That was it. And you've got the monk's plans, which is a safe park underpants, no mean 40 years early, 30 years early. And just the whole idea of the monk, you get Peter Butterworth and the biggest comedy stars to play your antagonist for the whole episode.
Yeah.
It gorgeous. The idea, the wristwatch, the anachronisms, the gramophone, everything. I just want to go watch the Time Ender again now, and it's not long since I've watched it.
No, I'm just checking a fact there that came to mind. Well, if my computer will let me check the fact, that is. Dalek Master Plan Wiki. Yes. What episodes did he do? Yes, I thought as much. Dennis Spooner, of course, also did half of the Dalek Master Plan, including episode 8, which is the one that's got the cricket scene, which inspired Douglas Adams. So his inspiration, his ability to inspire the generations beyond him, that has to be recalled too.
I can be funny too. Yes, Douglas Adams did rip off a lot of Doctor Who.
Yes. Oh, anyhow, I'm going to end this one and start again on the top 16.
Hurrah! Alrighty.
Yep.
Alrighty, just go when you're ready.
Oh, okay. Number 16. Back in the 80s, they were considered terrible for the show, but as younger generations have come to the show of Doctor Who, they're now seen as that kindly old couple who just tried to improve their vocabulary as children, referring to the great Pip and Jane Baker.
I'm absolutely delighted with this so far. I do agree they maybe have an issue in that they go very florid too often, but their stories are really, really well structured. And it's just one of the things over the years. Obviously, I think the only thing I really liked from season 22 at the time was probably Revelation of the Daleks, because it's Eric Saber in itself. It genuinely is funny in places, but really it's an absolute mess. And I've kind of come to think that Mark of the Rani is the best thing in that season. It just gets everything totally spot on. It gives Kate O'Mara and Anthony Ainley some absolutely beautiful lines, some brilliant rapport. And again, they come in when the show is in crisis. Twice, either side, that 86, end of Travel Time Lord, beginning of Sylvester McCoy era, and they kind of manage to wrap that up and they deliver it. There is a mini Pip and Jane Baker era right at the end there. As full credit to my good friend Jim, who came up with that theory. It's they are there at one of the most important times in the show's history, and they basically keep the show on it. As Uncle Terry said, they stopped the test car being on for 25 minutes, and in the circumstances who was in towards that part, that's unbelievable almost. Yeah, they are. Yeah, I do like them. I said the stories will never be my top 10, but they're actually good, solid Doctor Who. Even if even if you're not keen on that campness of Time and the Rani, say, but no, I enjoy them a lot.
Well, I can never truly hate a story like Time in the Rani, which has one of the great Doctor Who lines in all of the show. Look out! Killer insects! They kill! I've badly
I think
paraphrased it there, but it's so brilliant.
I think a lot of the problems with Time Riders were because they switched the setting from a forest to a quarry.
Mm.
So you've got ridiculous things like there's just this one big pipeline in a quarry. Now, where could he be hiding? I wonder.
Yes, but then that's not their fault. That's production.
No, and again, back in the 80s, there was a kind of desire there for the show to be taken seriously. And Pip and Jane Baker stories are a bit daft, and maybe the Agatha Christie homage isn't quite as, shall we say, on the nose as the Robots of Death. Maybe it's a bit, it's maybe a little written down to the audience, but they're really good, watchable piece of TV, and they're in short supply in that mid-80s period of Doctor Who.
I would point out that Vervoid is more of a whodunit than Robots of Death, because Robots of Death gives away whodunit very early on.
Yeah, with that bad piece of
Yes.
shooting, yeah, direction.
Whereas Terror of the Vervoid is a complete mystery unless you twig that Malcolm Tierney,
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah,
eh, I'm checking that because it's a name.
it's a name, and you might be thinking of the referee, for instance, or the one of Scotland's finest footballers.
Well, there's also the guy from Sapphire and Steel who was in. Yes, I was right first time. There's also, unless you notice that the villain is played by Malcolm Tierney, who usually always played the villain in 80s TV.
Yes.
But no, there's a lot to love about there the Vervoids. It's attempting to be Agatha Christie, very sci-fi via straight up Star era kill 'em all, complete with characters from the Doctor's past we've never met before, but who
Uncle
are
Travers.
so sort of pessimistic to see the Doctor. And of course, Michael Craig is such a wonderful actor.
Because in the way they're building that kind of world there, and the way they use floral language, they are doing the same kind of thing Bob Holmes gets
Yes,
praised for.
I mean, I like their stuff. It appealed to me when I was 8, so I'm nostalgic for it.
And really, yeah, the Doctor Who should appeal to you at that age.
Uh,
Yeah,
I was so inspired by their novelisation of Vervoids that I immediately wrote a rip-off version of it set in Glasgow Airport, where a character who was basically a Vervoid called the Gargoyle murdered 50 people in 5 pages. On reading it aloud to my family, it got to the point where the Commodore said, "Stop it, Gargoyle," but the Gargoyle killed him instead. And that's where it ended because my Aunt Pisa was laughing so hard at that. The writer.
Are we to say that Pip and Jane Baker are to blame for your writing career?
Partially.
Yeah. Well, what higher praise could you give?
Yeah. Number 15. Another person with great ideas who can also be quite witty. It's David Fisher.
Again, one of my favourite scripts here for the Androids of Tara,
Yeah.
and the original City of Death, and yeah, an even Creature from the Pit that's fine. It's decent, but the production is maybe not, doesn't serve the story that well. Plus, the Leisure Hive, which is such a weird story in that it's, if you've read the novelization, you know it's written as that Graham Williams era, that comedy thing almost, which explains your Famazi.
Yes.
And it's strong enough that you can strip a lot of the humor out, and it still works beautifully in a different setting. It's a really strong story. Yeah, I like, again, I like the guys who can write funny, and David Fisher had a really beautiful line. A man who created Count Grendel.
Yes.
You have to love that.
Best final line for any villain in the show. Next time, Doctor, I shall not be so lenient. He swims
And
away.
he knows exactly what he's doing there. It's that
Yes.
swashbuckling aeroplane thing, and he just nails the genre perfectly.
Yeah, I mean, David Fisher's great. He's an ideas man. Like, you've got the gambling aliens, you've got a planet with no metal. Is I'm not sure if that's physically possible, but it's an idea, a sci-fi idea. You've
You
got
can do it in science fantasy, I think.
yes, you've got vampire standing stones. He's a good man for a novel idea which you can base a four-parter around.
Yeah, he'd be perfect for that, for the Moffat era, because if Moffat said, bring us a feature film idea, and the Stones of Blood, you could run with that in Hammer quite easily.
Yes. Number 14, another one from the similar era, and we better be kind about him because he may see this on Twitter and reply. So actually, I think it is in fact the one and only Christopher Hamilton Bidmead.
So, Michael, tell me about Logopolis again and your love for it.
Oh, I see what it's trying to do. It just doesn't really work for me. We can quote Paul Guild here about it being his worst day at school because there's a maths lesson and his hero dies.
I can't deny that's a brilliant line.
Yes.
I wish I had come up with it.
And I still don't understand the concept of flushing the master out by going underwater.
No, it's very much a series of set pieces held together by a very one of the best directors of the era, and by Tom actually turning up and making an effort to make this kind. Again, it's almost a funeral.
Yes.
And the one thing I noticed when I was rewatching this, because I rewatched it last week, because my son has gone, right, we'll watch, we'll go through all the Doctors this year. So if it's a significant era, it's so many stories per month, and the shorter Doctors, we'll compress them into a couple months. But yeah, Logopolis, I noticed, you know when Tom's going to die, when he's got to make it over to the other side, pull the cable out to save the universe.
Hmm?
When the Master goes back in, what kills Tom Baker in that? He turns around and he puts his scarf back on. If he hadn't put his scarf back on, he'd have been fine.
The thing though with Mr. Bidmead is it's not just Logopolis. He also wrote Castor of Alpha and Frontiers, both of whom I love.
Oh, they're good. Yes, Castor of Alpha. It's tough to write a story in the TARDIS, as you know, because you're not a big fan of the Edge of Destruction.
Yes.
But it works because it makes it somewhere claustrophobic, somewhere dangerous. Without it takes the Doctor away almost, and then when it brings the Doctor back later, it's just it's what Russell does in the Christmas Vacation. The Doctor returns and makes the world a safer place, and when he's back in his up to full power, and Castor Alva itself, that when it gets Castor Alva, is gorgeous. The idea of the infinite recursion and the Isha pictures.
Yes.
And Front Joss, I was talking to again when we were thinking about what we might watch this month. Front Joss is quite high on the list because again, it's great. A far future, And it has the idea. What do you want for a cliffhanger? I'll blow the TARDIS up.
Yes.
Genius.
It works as a point to me in that one of my issue with Savard era. One of my issues with the Savard era is that it never seems to fully understand the character of Doctor Who himself. So he's always sidelined, or there must be another way, he says, as there is a body count higher than Terminator surrounding him,
Yeah.
blood everywhere. Whereas, for all his flaws you may claim in script editing and not understanding other people's points, perhaps, just Bidmead really got the character of the Doctor, and where it stands in the show. And Frontius works to kind of exemplify that brilliantly, because by the end of it, you've got the Doctor. He's saved the last of humanity, saved the companions. He's took the big bad to another place. He's saved the Tractators. He's got in there from earlier in the season. He's gone, there should have been another way, and for once, the Fifth Doctor actually gets to do that other way and save everyone and be the actual heroic Doctor that he rarely ever got a sudden chance to do.
Yeah,
And
and the Fifth Doctor, of course, Chris Bibby helped design the character, so he really does play into that kind of idea of that older man, this centuries-old alien trapped in a young body where no one listens to it.
yeah,
And that was a really strong hook, which I think, to a large degree, Eric Saward did throw away.
I mean, it's just interesting he comes back after 3 years and he still gets the ethos of the show better than the guy in charge.
Yes, I think the two Christophers, Bailey and Bimmy, both do that so well in that era, and it's why those stories stand out.
Yes. Plus, although I do not get the idea of the joke that is the TARDIS landing underwater. He says it's a joke, I just don't understand it. But there are a lot of actually genuinely witty moments. There are a lot of genuinely witty moments in Castrovalva and Frontios. The Doctor getting driven absolutely batty by the wee girl in Castrovalva, for example.
That's so lovely. Again, it's what Stephen Moffat does so many years later. So often uses the children for that exact reason.
And the absolute glee he gives Turlough reading about the destruction of Earth, which to Tegan's horror, given that it's her home and the place that he only has bad memories. Oh. Oh, number 13. Oh, it's another writer I know John likes. In fact, it's a writer I know Mandy likes, but she likes his literature more than his Doctor Who. It's Mr. Ben Aaronovitch.
Oh, you can't, again, Ben Aaronovitch. What a clever guy. That he is pretty much responsible for me being a Doctor Who fan to this day, because I was drifting before Remembrance, as I've said before, and that first episode, wham, straight back in the room. It's got something to say. It's in again the anniversary year. That previous anniversary year just defaulted to bring back the icons, but didn't do anything with them. So it's kind of dramatically inert. But this it goes right back to the roots of the Daleks as the fascist analogy, and it interrogates. It looks back. It's where it's being made in 1988. And it's examining what happened in 1963, the racism, the story of the post-war era that wasn't quite as clean as people might like.
Yes.
The defeated fashion wasn't quite like. And then again, Battlefield. I know it's kind of derided. I think there are moments which don't work in it. But you can't tell me that one of the greatest moments of the show isn't the Brigadier's showdown with the Destroyer. I just do the best I can. Yes.
It's
I see that every time.
I like that. I also like the Brigadier's showdown with Jean Marsh, where her son's like, doctor blatantly won't kill him, but then the
Yes.
Brigadier goes in and she goes, "Beware, he's steeped in blood."
Yes. Beautiful. Yeah, I know he's not happy with Battlefield because I think it was expanded to 4 episodes quite late in the day. But I think it works.
There's a lot of that I like. Primarily, it helps that one of my favorite actresses of all time is in it. Villaining it up, but she gets a good
Oh,
role.
the cliffhanger for part 3 where, and being his handmaid doesn't help.
Yes.
Oh, what more do you want from Doctor Who?
Oh, it's another one that I loved when I was just like 8 to 10 years old, so I'll always be fond of it. And believe it or not, when when George died, and I went round to see Mum and Cat, and we were all kind of mourning my granddad that day, and we all turned to each other and went, "We need to really watch the Doctor Who at the moment to get it off." And the one that came to everyone's mind instantaneously was Battlefield. That was nostalgic, fun, not too taxing Doctor Who that we'd all enjoy, and we did. So that's the highest compliment I can give it. It takes your mind off a grandfather dying.
Well, that's what it's all about. And yes, Mandy's absolutely right. The Rivers of London series is just something beautiful, completely rooted in the folklore of London, but in a modern way. And brilliant.
Made the error of telling her I've not read any of them, which is why they're all now on my Kindle.
Yeah, get to the first one. God, I thoroughly encourage it. When you're up to it, go for it.
I mean, the thing I think about Aronovich stuff is that it's nostalgic, but it's also got a nice picture.
Oh yeah, I tell the weird thing about the truth about Ben Roger, they had I think it was not a big writing fest, but it was a writing fest at one of the local venues, and they had a Doctor Who session. So I booked on for the Doctor Who session, and it was it's a couple of novels. I know it was Alistair Reynolds who'd written. I think it was it the Troughton novelization? Oh no, it was the John Pertwee book novel, I think. And I turned up a bit early, and there's one bit going in a corner. So I was having a look around and going, "There's Ben Aronovich there." I'm going, "Why haven't they got Ben Aronovich in for the Doctor Who thing?" Because he was much more in Doctor Who there than the other guys were, really.
Yes. Oh. Number 12. And we're going way back to the start now. It's the man who did historicals, which you're either enchanted by, me, or bored senselessly by, Dad. It's Mr. John Lucarotti, the man who the Aztecs and Marco Polo.
I can. Oh, and theoretically, the massacre
Theoretically.
for most of it, anyway. Novelization is really fun. I can see why maybe Marco Polo wouldn't be enchanting to a child, someone who was 6 or 7 in 1963, when you've just had the Daleks. My God, and you've got, oh look, the Vorder on their way as well. If you're going for the monsters, I can understand that. But the Aztecs, it's still one of the pinnacles of Doctor Who. 60 years later, it's astonishing. It's creating a drama. It's asking with a fundamental question about Doctor Who time traveling, and about the whole premise of the show. Right at the start, and it's not doing it with main character. It's doing it with Jackie Hill getting an absolute peach of a role.
Yes.
And John Ringham as well. Can you imagine John Ringham's face when he saw that script?
Yes.
It's like, thank you very much.
Could you play Richard III as an Aztec executioner? I'll do my best.
And and he gets every TARDIS regular in those scripts. He gets them a good, solid role in the story. And the stuff with Kamika with a cup of cocoa.
Yes. I like the Doctor and Kamika's stuff, and I like the relationship between Ian and Ixta, the warrior. How it goes from Ixta being wary and then fearsome of Ian when Ian beats him in combat, to when he manages to trick his way into beating Ian. He's so delighted because he's proven he can beat him, so he doesn't have to worry about him anymore. He kind of gets overshadowed by Ringham's performance, but I think Ian Cullen's really good in it too. And Walter Randall's Tanila always in the background.
Yeah.
You could see a man who has lasted a long way in that society by knowing when to keep quiet and think.
It's very Claudius, isn't it?
Yes. I guess I said when I was reviewing it that it doesn't matter if Totoxel wins in the end, because I feel Tanila's going to bump him off before he knows it. Yeah.
Yes, quite.
But no, it's just it's got wonderful cliffhangers. It's got so many great sort of dramatic two-hander scenes. Like you've got the Doctor
Yes.
and Barbara arguing about the ethics of changing time.
The
You've
dialogue in those scenes as well.
You've got so many great scenes between Barbara and Totoxel. The one where he tries to poison her and she admits that she's human, but he can't prove it.
Yes.
So that's genius. And you've got the fact that the people who are most changed by it, the people who are most changed by it are the TARDIS crew, because the Doctor is clearly touched by Kamika at the end, and Barbara feels guilty for having ruined Locke's life. Meanwhile, no one else has shifted.
Yes, you can change time in small ways, and I think LeCroix would be a lot more highly regarded if we could see more than one of his stories.
Yeah.
Again, it's really difficult to make a drama out of out of Marco Polo, which is a months-long thing. But they give it such scope, and still that one of my most wanted episodes back is that 500 Eyes, because I really want that story in the cave. It still works even when we've only got the audio there and maybe a few of the pictures.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a gorgeous piece of storytelling. It's something you would only get in that era of Doctor Who. You wouldn't get it anywhere since.
Interesting to see how some of it got told, like the travel diaries were meant to be shown on screen.
Yes.
And that would have been interesting too, but alas, it's gone. Like the Massacre,
Yeah.
which we know would be amazing because Paddy Russell directed it.
Absolutely. The Paddy Russell fan club in full effect.
Yes. Number 11 is the man that Trivial Pursuit claimed invented Doctor Who. It is Terry Nation.
Terry Nation. You can't deny his influence, though. And my pet theory is, yes, you can say he created Doctor Who, because the vision of Doctor Who that's there before they get the Dalek script is very, very different. Sidney Newman didn't want the bug-eyed monsters.
Mm-hmm.
He got the bug-eyed monsters. They weren't thinking that way. And Terry Nation, bringing in the Daleks, bringing in that whole pulp science fiction ethos, that's the element of Doctor Who which survives from the Veritas. It's the one which Jerry Davis and Innes Lloyd really draw upon, because they want the thrills and the ratings. In a way, he really did create Doctor Who. I think he can be a bit slapdash and shoddy with his writing and his plotting, which is why I wouldn't have him in my top 10. But as someone so influential, he really should be on the list.
I mean, he's really good at episode ones. He's your
Yes.
man to go for an episode one. Yeah, you'll have you know how it's going to be structured and paced right to the reveal at the end of the episode.
It's a Dalek. Wow.
Oh man, I tell you, it's a Dalek with the enlivened android invasion, no end.
Absolutely. All the keys of Marinus. But it's that he thinks that kind of the RKO serial stuff. It's the stuff he watched as a kid, which thrilled him as a kid, and
Yeah,
that's that. I approve of that. To bring that whole thing to Doctor Who, it really, really works beautifully.
I mean, he can be a bit all over the place at times, but at his best, he's a very engaging thriller writer for the show.
Yes, I think that's absolutely perfectly put. It's a pulp thriller
Yes.
every time. Even if if you think about stuff like, hang on, how far apart are the Khaled and the Thal cities in Genesis?
Yes.
We had nuclear
Walking
war there.
distance.
Good lord. Yeah, but it's always engaging. It's always entertaining, even if it's comfortable at times though, because it is almost predictable in a lot of the time. It's comfortable, but that's a tough balance. Comfortable but thrilling, and it really does work for him. And obviously, one of the great Welsh writers on Doctor Who, if not the greatest. Not quite the greatest, obviously,
And
as our list up no doubt will prove.
very good at writing the Daleks as gets. Especially in the Dalek Invasion of Earth, where they kill Baker when he surrenders. They kill that guy off screen who's having a panic attack. They slowly circle the guy trying to escape, block off all his escape routes, and then kill him. And of course, when they go to kill Dortmund, what do? They wait just long enough for him to realise his big bomb's a failure and then kill him, so that he knows that he's
Yes,
failed.
Yes, absolutely. There are some little touches, and he is very ambitious in what he asks of of the makers of Doctor Who, in both in the Dalek Invasion of Earth particularly. Go out, the Daleks invaded London. Wow, and all the scale of it is wonderful.
The Daleks invaded London was a volcanic explosion. BBC budget.
Yeah, but the mine scenes at the end work, and how many other writers at the time, how many of their stories would have made great feature films?
True. But, number 10.
Into the top 10.
Yes. Number 10. A writer who a lot of people really like. And we have to be optimistic and accentuate the positive here. Because it is Eric Saward. Well, I mean,
well, again, Earthshock is such a good thriller, though. But the problem is he uses that as a template again and again, but doesn't have the brilliance of Grimway to make it coherent.
something I realised the other night, thinking ahead of this, is that Earthshock and Revelation of Daleks, which we tend to give passes to, are pretty much the same as Attack of the Cybermen and Resurrection of the Daleks, which, as you're
Yes,
not a fan
very
of,
much so.
you've got memorable side characters. The whole thing depends on the direction. Body count's higher than a small World War II war battlefield, and
the Doctor's a tourist around the side of
yes,
everything.
and as characters become run out of plot, they get bummed off meaninglessly mostly.
Some without meeting the Doctor.
Yes.
Bates and Stratton, I don't think ever meet the Doctor and Princess, but despite having a huge chunk of screen time.
Rula Lenska never meets the Doctor either, isn't she, in quite a lot of Resurrection?
Yes, she was a major guest star.
Yes. But I think on that it shows that he is quite good. If he didn't, no, again, because while he didn't understand the whole philosophy behind the character of Doctor Who, and I'm quoting him from his interview in Doctor Who magazine here, where he said he didn't get it. He's very good at putting together memorable side characters who come in and kind of take over the show to get around the fact he can't write for the Doctor themselves.
He's not interested in the Doctor. He's interested about was it? I think the quote is "men in combat," for instance.
I mean, you've got loads of them in Revelations. William Gaunt's Assassin.
Yeah.
You've got
Joe Bell.
Eleanor Braun.
Clara, yes.
And
her secretary.
Yes.
I love them. Good secretaries are so hard to find.
Yes.
Beautiful.
And in Earthshock, obviously, you've got Beryl Reid, even if that was accidental on his part. And
yes. And apparently Peter Grimwade as well, from what I understand, despite the fact Peter Grimwade had worked with it before. And Michael Robbins in the Visitation.
True, yes. I'm forgetting about the Visitation there. I like the Visitation as well. Quite a enjoyable romp.
It's my most favourite Doctor Who story.
But I think when you have such a nihilistic worldview in the show, you need a sympathetic director to get the most out of it. And when he does, well, I don't think he does for two of his big stories, and it suffers as a result.
I mean, the trouble, a lot of what I love about Doctor Who is in the humour, and that is what undercuts the horror. But the trouble is that the humour in Eric Saber's story is all black humour, so it never quite works to undercut the story to comfort you or comfort the younger audience against the horror. So I think it's that it's kind of it's in writing, it's a monochrome version of Doctor Who almost.
Yes.
And yeah, and for me, again, a lot of Doctor Who is juxtaposition, is the appeal of two almost incompatible things put together, and I don't think he really does that. And he perhaps, I think he's really poor on structure, which is why he wasn't a great script editor. But you can't deny that Earthshock is one of the most effective stories of that whole decade.
I mean,
even you like
it works really well as a sort of a filler, but I'm also aware how much the production adds into it, and I'm aware that it became a template. It's a bit like, if you were Prime Minister and you called a referendum and it worked once, and then you kept calling referendums, assuming that it would always work. Eventually, you're going to get Attack of the Cybermen.
So you're saying Attack of the Cybermen is Brexit here?
You may very well think that. I couldn't possibly comment. Oh, well.
Again, he's such a significant writer that I can't. You can't really deny that he should be on these lists somewhere, I think.
Because I have just realised I have screwed up the list, I'm going to have to put in an edit here that I can use to edit back earlier to fix one, because we're about to talk about someone twice. Because I've just realised that number 8 on this list is Mac Hulk. So I hadn't actually screwed up in the first place. I have re-screwed up trying to screw up the non-screw up. So I can just go.
All right.
Number 20 is two men who work together quite well with each other. It is Jerry Davis and Kip Hedler.
Brilliant. I think just because the moon base.
No comment. So I'll just edit that back in at the start later.
Perfect.
And I shall put a bit in for Matt. He's a few. He's number 8. We're flipping to number 9, and we can do some talk about him. But then I will move the bulk of what you said earlier about him to that spot in the thing.
Well, just stick the whole thing of what we said earlier around. I don't know how much of an editing job it'll be, but
Oh, it'll work.
Number 7 then, and then just do that. Number 8.
Mhm.
We'll go straight to number 7.
Oh,
Yeah.
so I am going to take a deep breath. Oh, I want to stop this one and try and get Zoom to work again.
Cool. See you in 5, 4
Right.
or 5.
Number 9 is a much loved writer who sadly died a few months ago. We only got him briefly in Doctor Who before he became edited much elsewhere. It's Mr. Chris Boucher.
Was it only, I think, 3 scripts for the series? But and again, what a range that is. You know, you've got one which is hard science fiction, you know, perfectly with that new wave. You've got one which is, you know, Agatha Christie in space. Agatha Christie meets Asimov, which is a cracking idea. And the third one is basically a folk horror. And the range he was done is fabulous. Obviously, he's better known for particularly Blake 7, the way he's kind of he does have quite a nihilistic worldview, which you can also see in something like Star Cops.
Yeah.
But they're all top tier Doctor Who stories in very different ways. You know, he understands the writing for TV, the imagery that he gives. You know, the robots. I know they're partly down to the science. You've got the Doctor's face on the mountain and the computer at the end of part 3 with all the face and all the voices and the Fender. I know some people might criticize, but I love the Fender as a monster. That whole idea of that kind of gestalt monster terrified me when I read the Target novel years before I saw it. But yeah, absolutely one of the great writers who I wish we'd see more. But I know I think they wanted him to do a 4th script, but he didn't have the time to do it. So
Yeah. He was very good, man. And
absolutely,
understandably why. Although he did write there's a scene he wrote, which I'm still gobsmacked got through everyone to get on Doctor Who, which is the one where Stal asks to be helped commit suicide in Vendel.
yes.
That just hits you any time you watch it, even now as an adult. It's like, what? I can't believe they got that in Doctor Who.
Mind you, there's a lot I can't believe they got through Doctor Who in that kind of era. Just that Holmes Holmes is still script editor at that point. So yeah, it's a lot of that's strong meat for a tea time.
Mm-hmm.
You can see why yes. We'll come to that.
I mean, he's so good at sort of avant-garde horror, be the right phrase. Like, the robots themselves, or the Fendel skull, or the whole concept of the Face of Evil Part 3 cliffhanger with the computer using the child's voice to scream, "What am I?
Yes.
Who am I?"
Who am I? Who am I? The Doctor.
He's very good at imagery that sticks in your head.
And obviously, I think I think he comes up with Leela, or essentially fletches out the character so beautifully as well. You know, that's no mean feat to actually get that character right.
She works so well, and it's partly down to his scripting over her first 8 episodes.
Yeah, it's a strong character. It's not just, oh, she's a simpleton with a knife. No, she's just someone who doesn't have she's instinctively smart. She doesn't have the book learning, but she is clever in her own way. and it's such a good role for Louise Jameson. And obviously, as I've said before, Louise Jameson, I think, is probably the best actress to play a companion in Doctor Who.
Oh yes. Number 8 is Mr. Shades of Grey himself, Mr. Malk.
What a writer! What a writer!
Yes, I mean, I think if you could sum him up, it would be pure nostalgia. It's never quite what you expected it to be. There's always a
Absolutely.
oh, that's the man who warned us about Brexit before we were even in the EU.
Absolutely. Oh, genius.
Number 7, David Whittaker.
And at this point, I shall put a plug. Simon Guerrier is writing a biography of him, which I believe will come out either late this year or early next year.
Mhm.
I think that's a must buy, and I'm certainly pre-ordering it. So again, as I said, I think on the Hall of Fame, he should be in the Hall of Fame because he does so much of the groundwork that gets Doctor Who groundwork. It gets gives Doctor Who launch. It gives it that power and energy. He understands the character. He helps form that character. He puts the whole first season together. Between Unearthly Child, Dalek Invasion of Earth, and it's such a diverse range of stories. And you watch, and it's again one of the oddest show series that's ever been put on TV, and yet it's his ability that makes it all coherent. And you look at the various things you see, Edge of Destruction, which is before the term was invented, the bottle show. He gets 2 episodes out of just travels in out of a broken switch. That's astonishing. Then you've got The Rescue, which again it's Doctor Who's second launch, essentially. It's you've got the first major change of the TARDIS crew. Who would you give it to? Steers it beautifully through. Again, he does the same with Patrick Troughton, albeit I know there were different issues with the writing at that point. And then The Crusade, which is probably, I think, my favourite David Whittaker story. It's such a there's such good material there for the actors, and you're giving this to Julian Glover and Jean Marsh with William Hart behind. Wonderful.
Who else wrote entire Doctor Who scenes in iambic pentameter?
I don't think anyone else did. Particularly, you're giving actors that in 1965, I think it went, and it just works beautifully. They rise to challenge. It is almost televised theatre at that point.
I think he's among the best at doing character-based tension building.
Yes.
Much of the plots move because of people acting, not necessarily how in reaction to what people do, but what they think people have done or are going to do against them. Very good at that misunderstanding style Jeopardy. The Crusade is a use of it.
Again, it's Shades of Grey, isn't it? He redoes the Shades of Grey nicely.
Yes. Obligatory panda.
Absolutely, and of course, there's one of your very favourites as well, the Enemy of the World.
Yes.
Again, a very different story again.
Another one with characters. It's a plot moved. It's a plot moved essentially by Salamander, Donald Bruce, Bennett, all of these characters reacting to the Doctor and Co appearing in their world.
Absolutely, and I think the only thing I'd thought on that would be that it ends very abruptly. But again, it's such an ambitious script for the show. It's set on it's set in multiple countries. It's got the helicopter in there. It's got people attempting to keep a prisoner in a corridor, and it has got one of Doctor Who's great one-episode characters.
Cook.
Of course, the chef.
Listen.
What a count!
Oh.
If you were in the Doctor Who universe, let's face it, I've met you. This would be the role I would give you if I was casting you in Doctor Who. The grumpiest man alive.
I resemble that remark. Oh. Oh, number 6. It's a new Who. In fact, he's quite new. But again, he's been missing for a few years. But he may come back, so I hear. Jamie Matheson.
How many writers have you had on Doctor Who that just come into the show and they just nail the show perfectly? Mummy on the Orient Express. Okay, you've got the high concept, and he just puts a Doctor Who story together beautifully, and then you follow it up the next week with something with an absolutely out there concept. The aliens who are in different dimensions to ourselves, and it was gorgeous. And what more do you want from him? He's such a good writer on that score. Everything he's done, Oxygen, Doctor Who versus Capitalism. I love Oxygen.
It's so angry. It's angry sci-fi, and it works as satire and as horror. It's brilliantly done. And what I found interesting is that very recently, Matheson put up his first draft of Mummy on the Orient Express online.
Yes.
Read to show how, in his words, everything needs to be drafted. But even from his first draft, you can see the general idea of how it was going to work, and a number of the scenes that he'd already stumbled on were genius, even if they had to be slightly refined so that you could get the best out of them. That opening scene with Janet Henfrey, for example, is there.
Yes.
Although it's midway through, not at the start. And it just shows a writer who can he gets the ethos and he's working about how to make it best fit the show. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure he must come back at some point.
Oh, I would hope so, because there isn't enough Doctor Who by him out there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's even I think is it the it's the girl who died is his as well, I think, isn't it, as well?
I think so.
Yeah. Again, it's a really good comedy. The only fault of which is that Brian Blessed couldn't actually do it when the role was so obviously written for him.
Yes.
Right. So and again, I presume it's his image at the end with the world turning around a shield there. But the guy can write. The guy he hasn't written a bad Doctor Who story. Yeah, there are very, very few writers who get it right every time. Most of the ones we celebrate for their triumphs and tend to play down maybe their less stories. But no, every single story he's done is just has been spot on for me. He's funny. He knows where to put the horror in. He knows the tone, and it's someone who just got the series from the off.
And I mean, he was only there for the Capaldi era, and he's already in the top 6 in the fan vote. So that just shows you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Number 5, possibly one of the most loved writers of the 20th century, who sadly died ludicrously young. It is, of course, the mercurial, slightly insane, nutty professor of sci-fi that was Douglas Adams.
I mean, I don't know if you can quite put him there as Doctor Who contributions, because you've got essentially one story he wrote for someone else, one story he co-wrote with Graham Williams over a weekend, and then one that barely got half made. But as a writer, my God, the influence he's had on particularly my generation, that worldview, that kind of sideways look, it's very, very kind of Footlights, which is where obviously he got those ideas from, and Python, which he was tangentially involved in right at the end. But there is no funny writer who's ever been involved with Doctor Who, apart from maybe one who I'm sure we'll come to.
And he's basically there for City of Death and Pirate Planet, and presumably
And
bits of
City of
Shadow.
Death, of course, which is now officially the best Tom Baker story.
Yes. City of Death, which he rewrote from David Fisher's plot, that because Fisher was having trouble with it in his personal life at the time. And to be fair, he also rewrote vast chunks of Destiny of the Daleks. Or to be more precise, he and King Greaves and a whole bunch of booze rewrote vast chunks of Destiny of the Daleks.
Yes. I should point out, Graham Williams also co-wrote City of Death. Apparently, yes. It was Graham Williams, Doug Adams, and Coffey. So it's Adams plus one plus Stingers. I think maybe he needed one other writer to get through that first draft, or to get the words down on the paper.
Yeah,
and the Pirate Planet. Yeah, it's got almost too many ideas, but it's brilliant. It's just the character. Yeah, we find these jewels everywhere. It's great.
He was asked about it later in his life, and he said it would have made a good six-parter.
He's absolutely right. Again, the Doctor being made to walk the plank. The idea of that Xanthi at the heart of the planet, and the Doctor always being one step ahead. He knows who the nurse is all the way through. He knows that the captain can't be this master planner, because look at him, for goodness sake.
It's similar to the Doctor and Doc Holliday back in the Gunfighters, in that the Doctor and the Captain both use the same sort of Columbo obfuscation of their talents to confuse other folk off their guard. Because both of them use it, they can see the other uses it, and it irritates them. So there's some great sort of they irritate the other.
Absolutely, and I mean, you can see his influence right through. And obviously, there's the is it Creature on the Pit where you have Oolong Kalufid referenced? Oh, it was that in Destiny. But yeah, it's the surely he wrote the the mountain climbing. Oh, it's in Tibetan. How to teach yourself Tibetan. Oh,
It's
yeah.
With some scriptwriters, you can tell where their edits are in, and then there's Douglas Adams who goes, "Oh, look, rocks."
His voice is so strong, yet you can't say anything else. And it's tough to judge him on Shardra as well, because Shardra was only half made. We don't see what it would have been like as an edited, finished story. So it's mildly unfair, because I know it's a bit of a mess at what's left as it stands, because a lot of what was shot wasn't the kind of the story relevant stuff. It was the color.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still enough great gags in there. The idea of the invisible spaceship. My God, that's a producer's dream. Yes. Don't need to fork out for that.
Well, I always think that when RTD and Moffat were both asked whether any classic writers who, if you could, you would want them to write for your era, and there were two names that they both mentioned, one which we'll get to evidently, and the other was Douglas Adams. Although, as Stephen Moffat said, you'd still be waiting 10 years later if it was genius when you got it.
True.
And the other writer of those two is number 4. It is Mr. Bob Holmes.
Only at number 4. That's a
Number
bit of a
4.
shocker. But
Yeah.
yeah, he has to be in your top, but in the top 5, because you look at the stories. He isn't. He is by no means the best writer in terms of structure. He is brilliant though with set pieces, and the set pieces. You remember as well. You've got the mummies in Pyramids of Mars. You've got the Tom Baker's speech in The Ark in Space. You've got the Sontarans in The Time Warrior. Pick out your moments from Spearhead from Space, for instance, or even the Dathlemen, Terror of the Autons. He is a fantastically entertaining writer. The fact he can't do endings is neither here nor there. It's every ending.
Blow it up.
Blow it all up. That's it.
No, he's great at sort of what the fandom calls the Holmesian double act. The two characters who bounce off each other well. He's
Who Eric Saywood entirely ripped off. Let's not forget later on.
he is probably one of the best at doing dialogue. He's got so many great quotable lines throughout his 15 years on the show.
It's a way he uses old slang right through.
Yes.
It's like panopticon he uses, and Gallifrey from Gallifrey.
I mean, even right at the end when he was, even right at the end, yes. Sorry.
So yeah, it's and it's in the brain of Morbius, wasn't it? The silent dirigibles of the Houthi. Paul Cornell got a book out of that one line.
Oh, you can spot the RTD influence there too.
Absolutely, he was absolutely the master of just painting in little corners of the universe in just a few words. Again, producer's dream, because you don't need to put that on screen.
I mean, I think my favourite story of his is the Reboss Operation, because it's got the great big characters, including Ian Cuthbertson's Garon, who nearly steals the show from Tom Baker, and you see Tom Baker nearly laughing, breaking character, his reactions. It's very witty, but it's almost like a how to do for a young Russell T Davies, because you've got all these references, these mythical and great things happening just off screen that makes the world bigger and more interesting and fascinating.
And arguably the best scene he ever wrote, which is the Binro the Heretic one. It just breaks your heart. It's so gorgeously played. And I think my favourite other Holmes ones were where he'd been edited by someone else with a stronger hand. I think when he gets Uncle Terry ahead of him. For instance, Carnival of Monsters, which is a beautiful piss take of TV.
Yes.
And The Time Warrior, which maybe the direction isn't great, but again, the language, the roles he's given, he gives those little larger than life, roles for actors to get their meat into their thing to. And maybe the Space Pirates isn't quite so well regarded. Again, it's got the characters in it though. I think it's one of those that would be much more highly regarded if we had the visuals. The Power of Kroll and something like that, particularly Hydro. Again, though, they've got some fantastic lines in them.
And Annie's got loads of characters of note. I mean, even right at the end when he was old, well, he wasn't that old, but he was sick and dying, and he was writing parts of Trial. He's brought in Glitz, who has quite a lot of wonderful bits, like him referring to his psychiatrist saying he had a maladjusted approach. And goes, that sounds like an insult, Mr. Glitz. That does, boy. Mind you, I was trying to kill him at the time.
I was surprised last time I watched Mysterious Planet. There are some really good lines in it.
Yes.
I remember it as quite dull. But it's that whole idea of they base their society on 3 books. Is it The Habits of the Canada Goose? If I remember right. I think maybe the Two Doctors is certainly a weaker one, but I think that one can kind of be laid a little bit towards Eric Savenstall because he doesn't know
Mm,
when to rein Bob Holmes. Oscar
yeah.
stabbing is probably the
Yes.
wrong tone for a Saturday night show.
I think he needed a strong hand to like note when he'd gone over the line and bring him back.
Yes, because again, this is why I think he wasn't perhaps as great a script editor as everyone says he was, because he did destabilize the show to the point where the BBC management, it's the first time they interfere in, taking Philip Hinchcliffe off, because they think Hinchcliffe isn't doing his job by, reining in what we see,
Mhm.
the violence that was being seen on Saturday TV. And
Yes.
partly because Mary Whitehouse is there. But then you've set the precedent, and the BBC management is far more willing to get involved with the production of the shows after that. So he
I
has a
believe
kind of
I believe somebody wrote an article once
inevitable.
about how the Rob Holmes destroyed Doctor Who.
Yes, I have. I don't know if I've written that, but I certainly bored you to death with it many a time.
So, top three time. Number 3, Stephen Moffat.
Push comes to shove, he might well be my favourite Doctor Who writer, because the guy is, if you want a funny line, he's got 600 suggestions for you at
Mhm.
least. But I think the first thing Doctor Who stories, I was aware of him from Press Gang, which is still a magnificent kid show. It's far too good to be a kid show. But then, I knew him from Continuity Errors, where you read it and you go, this guy's funny and he knows Doctor Who in better than almost any of the writer in this book in a short story. Curse
Mhm.
of Fatal Death. Again, you can see almost all of the ideas that Stephen Moffat will reuse later on. It's funny, it's affectionate, it knows Doctor Who, and the guy was going to write a good Doctor Who story, even if he hadn't done drama at that point. Then The Empty Child. Let's face it, one of the
Excellent.
Everybody Lives. Oh my god! That was, I think, the first moment ever in Doctor Who. Like, I just almost stood up and cheered because it was so perfect. It hits that damaged Ninth Doctor's character, the sheer joy of that scene. Oh, it's wonderful. And he was the guy. God bless Russell, because he is a magnificent writer, but he was being stretched by having to write so many episodes each year and edit all those. And Moffat's stories became the ones that put it, and everyone wanted to see his version of Doctor Who. So
Mhm.
I say he did. And he delivers the 11th hour, which is, it's okay, you're in safe hands. And the thing I think is really almost underestimated about him is that by 2010, you had, was it 47 years of history. The thing Stephen Moffat is really good at over his course of his reign is taking the past of Doctor Who and making something new out of it, or refashioning it in a way that you don't see, you haven't seen before. You see it in that new angle, that new light, and he is, and it genuinely, I absolutely adore you. I don't think anyone else could have pulled the Day of the Doctor off so well, particularly the chaos behind the scenes at the time.
I think the thing I take most, apart from the fact that he's written about 40 Doctor Who stories, which is beyond anyone else by miles, is that most people take his sort of the fact he's one of the few writers actually think about time and consequences of time travel as a plot
Mm.
device. But the thing I take from him is he's quite witty. He got that inspired by Douglas Adams on his heart sleeve. Like The Empty Child, the bit usually this everybody lives scene is the bit that sticks in your mind, but the bit at the end of that scene where the old woman says to Dr. Constantine, "My leg, what's wrong with it? It's back." It wasn't there before. It was, well, there is a war on. If you miscounted. Glorious.
So man,
Uh,
yeah, it does get him under it, but that he is very, very good at breaking your heart so often, almost as good as Russell is at times.
I mean, at his best, he was unsurpassable. And if there are peaks and troughs, that's due to the vast quantity that he produced in 7 years.
But even towards the end of that era, there's something you've got formally daring. He's writing something like Extremist, which is again playing with the format. He's this the obvious one, Heaven Sent, and then Hellbent, which is absolutely undercutting the way Doctor Who does finales.
Yes.
And then possibly it might be my favorite episode of New Who, just because it's one of my comfort things. The Husbands of River Song, which is a gorgeous bit of writing and acting, and I know it was originally due to be his finale, but it's just perfect. It's just one of those perfect episodes for me. You can point flaws out to me, and I will ignore.
Oh, well, number 2, Russell T Davies.
Oh, I've worked out who's number 1 now, and I'm quite happy with that as well. Again, what can you say? The guy, going back, Lawrence Miles was always kind of dubious about getting Doctor Who back, because he thought that if it came back, it would be written by a fan, and a fan who would lean into the fanish view of Doctor Who. So, it would be maybe a one-season thing, which we would all absolutely adore, but which the general public would go, whatever. And the great thing is, it did come back. It was written by a fan, but it was also written by someone who was almost the biggest fan of popular TV imaginable. There could not have been anyone more perfect than Russell T Davies to bring the show back with, my God, what an impact. I remember the Sunday morning after Rose went out, I was just there going, we were all there going, that was fantastic, loved it. Is it going to get the ratings? I don't know. And I remember I was on instant messenger to a friend at the time, 10 o'clock Sunday morning, and you're going, and the story came through of the ratings. Have you seen what the ratings are for this? No, here you go, have the link. Oh my God, and much stronger language. And it's just, you cannot underestimate the achievement of putting Doctor Who right back to the heart of national conversation, to the point where people in work who, maybe hadn't given a damn, on the 25th of March 2005, by the end of that season, they were spending the whole week on the internet trying to find hints of what was going to happen in the parting of the ways. I can see why some people might find his style, it is a very sugar rush TV. It's very dependent on emotion. It's very, but that's why it has that grip. It's got the power that of good soap opera. It makes you care for those characters, and it will happily tear your heart out afterwards. Yeah. It's absolutely deserves to be around the top of this list.
Yeah. He brought the show back. And what else can you say?
It's like, there you go, the country owes him a debt. A big one.
Oh. And number 1, well, there should be no surprise here. Who else could it be? It is, in fact, Terrence Dicks.
Well, as a writer for Doctor Who else? He is an absolute genius of structure. He's influenced very much by all the crime novels he loved. Just that the ability to tell a story in such compact space, you know, you can say that I think he only wrote, was it 4 scripts for the show? Is it? I think. Fang Rock, Robots, War Games, 5 Doctors. I think are those his only actual credits? He doesn't have one, but he basically put that Pertwee era on screen and wrote everything that was a final draft by him. And it's one of the most consistent, brilliant eras of the show that you're going to see. It's almost endlessly rewatchable.
Yeah. I mean, it's so good. I like how he structures things. So he will put bits of the plot through the 4 episodes, not so they're all dumped at the end, but so that they build the plot and character. Like in State of Decay, you find out that there are vampires and they are very early on, but it's art. How the characters react to things is the plot, opposed to twists, so to speak.
Yeah. You'll forget one that was State of Decay. I haven't watched that in ages. I'm going to do a rewatch.
Horror Fang Rock might be the best 4-parter that Doctor Who ever did in terms of nuts and bolts mechanics of how to do a Doctor Who 4-parter.
As a template, it's absolutely perfect. It's just, there you go. Go away. Look at how he's doing things here.
And I love his advice to writers on the DVD, where he says you should see it's great advice to writers. If you get stuck, add more characters. Then, if you get further stuck, you can bump them off.
It's almost up there with the if in doubt, have someone come into a room with a gun.
Yes. But no, I mean, obviously he stands as one of the best scriptwriters TV had. So he's also got the whole Pertwee era as his legacy as well as his writing. But as a writer, as a craftsman, I think he was second to none in the show's history.
Absolutely, and let's not underestimate the job he did with the Target novels. Even when he's said to be just churning them out in the 80s, with the books not regarded, he's always fixing plot holes and then looking at things, knowing where they were right. As a pure writer, it's probably really good to have him at number 1 because, again, he's an artist. Or I know he sees himself as an artisan, but he really is an artist.
Wow, he was the greatest. Well, that concludes our look at the writers as voted for you. If you've got any comments or disagreements, tell us in the comments section below, and remember to like and subscribe. Thank you.
I know this is going to go off very quickly.
Yes, because it's like 30 seconds left. That's why I've had to. And because it's a 5-minute thing, I'm literally just going to have to call it a night and very abruptly, like him at the end of Snake Dance.
Yes.
We shall be in touch via the thingamajiggy, and we'll do the rest in a week or two. Like 2.
Yeah, just let me know when free, and I should be able to work around it. Hopefully, we won't be able to have to start as late as tonight.
Right. See you later.